Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Andrew Snorton with Creative Community Solutions. And as you're aware, whenever we do press and media work, we pretty much cover a little bit of everything: arts and entertainment, sports, government and politics, community-based, you name it. If we can get there, we will. And every once in a while, we get the opportunity to sit down and talk with some great people. And I'm so excited, especially being from New Jersey and get a chance to talk with somebody from the tri-state, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. I'm really excited with this, filmmaker, creative, storyteller. I'm telling you what, I'm gonna have him introduce himself. We're gonna get up and run it.
Hey, my name is Jay Burrows. I am the author of Porn, the Truth, the Whole Truth, and Nothing But the Truth. Also, I am a screenwriter. I've written films for Royal Family Films that are one that is out now on Tubi TV, which is called King of Newark 2. We have a premiere coming up this February, on the 24th of February, for A Father's Pride, which is very near and dear to me because I wrote it and that was my first time co-directing. So I'm pretty excited about that. We also have a few other movies that we're putting into process right now. We're just looking for a distribution deal at the moment, but they'll be out and able to be viewed soon.
Wow. So when I said creative, you basically made me look good. Before we get in a little bit more in depth with the book, the film projects, things along those lines, give us a point of reference, where you're from, and what are some of your moving parts that didn't have to do with writing or filmmaking?
Well, I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in the Marcy houses, Marcy projects. Most of you may know that from Jay-Z, of course. We actually grew up with him. He's about 2 years older than I am, but we all grew up together. I survived Marcy. I survived Brooklyn. I currently am still in Brooklyn. I've traveled all over. I've lived in Atlanta, I've lived in VA, but somehow, some way, I always kept coming back to Brooklyn. It's always been my home. Other things I've done outside of that, went to college. I went to Long Island University in Brooklyn campus. I was an exotic dancer for over 11 years. That was kind of interesting within itself because it took me pretty much all over the country and outside of the country, and I got to see the world a little differently, as far as like traveling and how you're treated by women when you're doing certain things that I was doing at the time. But it also gave me a lot to talk about in my films and in my book as well. So a lot of things that I went through as an individual, creating my persona in that light, really prepared me for entrepreneurships, because you had to market yourself, you had to brand yourself, you had to come with something different and keep creating content for the women to watch every time that they saw you. So it also kind of prepared me for the life that I live right now. I wouldn't say it was a drawback, and I hold no regrets to it, but it is something that is a part of my past, and I kind of just leave it there. And I only talk about it in references to things like the book itself or just the lifestyle I was living.
So let me ask you this question, because right there you gave a lot of rich information about this. Is, it's the proverbial, you see me where I am, but you don't know where I've been in order to get here. When did you know it was time for you to pivot from the exotic dancer, I'll say lifestyle / profession, to tapping into another creative part of yourself? Because regardless of what we think, dance in whatever form is still creativity. It is, yes. It still is. But how did you know that you needed to redirect your creative energy from that particular aspect of dance to going into writing and eventually film?
Well, I realized being in the game for over, I think it was my 10th year, my 10th or 11th year. And I had realized I had reached a pinnacle. That was my point, where I was as popular as I was going to become. I was well known and, making the amount of money that I was making, but it was still like an emptiness. I wasn't really fulfilled. Although the attention was fantastic, the money was great, but I wasn't fulfilled. And I always wrote since I was a child. So I was always writing something. I love the art of story. I love telling stories, like sitting in kind of conversations with people. I love to reference back and tell stories about different things, and I have a very good imagination. And I also can remember things in detail. Most people forget certain details, but I remember very things vividly in detail because I'm a very visual person. Well, homing that skill was what led me into screenwriting. Screenwriting, apart from regular storytelling, you have to be extremely visual because your audience has to watch what you're doing. You can't be descriptive like as a novel would be, but you have to paint a certain kind of picture in a small amount of time, small window of time. And I love the challenge of doing that. Then I branched off and wrote my first novel, and that was more of a necessity. That came out of necessity. It was a situation I was going through, and that was part of my healing.
And I grinned because what you just said, when I think about doing my first book, it was that cathartic release. Like there was some real fill in the blank going on, for lack of a better term. So, but it's great that to varying degrees you understand like the different aspects of storytelling through the lens of writing, where you're helping someone create that visual, but then screenwriting where you have to put the visual out there. Which one would you say is more of the creative challenge? Is it more of writing as an author or writing as a screenwriter slash director slash actor because of what you have to do?
I believe for me, it was more challenging to do the screenwriting because the space is limited. You may have 100 pages or 120 pages to get out everything that you're trying to get out. When I first sit down to create, I may have this vivid story in my mind, and as I start pinning it and putting everything on a computer and all this stuff, I realize that I only have a certain amount of time to say certain things, so I need to get to the points. And also at the same time, these characters that I'm birthing through every film, they have to be relatable to people, because if they're not relatable, no one's going to watch this stuff. And you want to carry a message along as well as make them relatable. So you have to package your characters in a way where this can be the person that lives next door to you. This could be a family member that you have, that you see every day. So I tend to like, being that I'm from New York City, I'm able to muse a lot of people because I can get on a train, I can see certain people, they act a certain kind of way, and I can take from that characteristics and plug them into one of my characters. And I love people watching. I like to do that a lot. And I take various quirks and different things that people do and add them into my characters to make them more rich and make them feel like real people that you would see on a day-to-day basis.
And I'm glad you walked through that, because you walked through elements of the thought process. The like you said, the key thing is the attention to detail. But like you said, when you're writing for film, you've got to compress everything, and you got to just come out swinging, for lack of a better term. So yes. With the book Porn, because we see that in the background, walk through with us some of the key themes and concepts, or what are some of the key takeaways you want readers to have when they pick up this particular book?
So the book Porn itself is just about my life as a porn addict for over 30 years. I talk about where I discovered it at when I was about 8 or 9 years old, how it plagued me throughout my life, and how I got out of it at 40 plus, and how I remain porn free on a daily basis. It's a struggle. So the easiest way that I put it is, when I started, it was like being in a movie theater. I'm sitting in the front row, there's a 40-foot screen in front of me. That was porn. Now I'm in the same movie theater, but I'm in the last row, and the screen is like a 10-inch zenith down in the front. It's still there, but it doesn't consume me like it did before. I may have the urges, but now I know how to fight against it. So the thing that I offer to anybody who's dealing with the struggle that I had to deal with is hope. You can overcome this, but it takes discipline. And it's going to be something that you're going to war against, because your flesh has a taste for it now. Once you've opened yourself up to it, now it's going to be difficult for you to wean yourself away from it. but it's not impossible. The things I found that worked for me, I put those solutions in the book. Like myself, I listen to praise and worship music to get my mind off of those thoughts. Then move from there, and I can go into the reading of my word or go into prayer, fasting, whatever I need to do to continue the battle. But I gave something concrete to start with because you need a foundation. And when I was out looking for one, I couldn't find it. People pointed fingers at a problem, but they didn't give a solution. So I'm giving my part of the solution that may work for me, but it will lead you to something that'll work for you as well. So anyone who reads this, know whether you have the problem or you may know someone that has the problem. This struggle is very real. And a lot of people don't believe that it is, but it is. And if this is not okay.
No, I was about to say, but in listening to you, but you know what? You're identifying, but not only just through your journey, for lack of a term, to put porn in its place and perspective, but that parallels, quote, any other addiction. And I love Absolutely. The analogy that you gave. So when people look at the title, oh, it's not just that. It's thematically talking about if there's something that you're addicted to.
Yes.
There are pathways to help you put it in perspective. And I love the analogy you gave. You're still looking at the screen, but for lack of a better term, we're keeping social distance.
Absolutely.
And like some things you gotta keep your distance from because it puts you in a safer space and you can see what's coming. Like you can slow down the moving parts. So during your whole breakdown, I took that in as what you're sharing is not just dealing with an addiction to porn, but addiction in general. So if people quote, you can't judge a book by its cover. You got to read the book in order to know what's going on. So even if people get thrown off by the cover, if they actually open it, it's actually providing people with the way, hey, this is what I was addicted to. But if you're addicted to something, here's a starting point.
Right. And that was the point, to give somebody a foundation. Because you may have a lot of people where, okay, I've heard this before. Porn is not a problem for some people. Cigarettes may have been the issue, or drinking. I grew up with alcoholics and also drug addicts in my family. On a day-to-day basis, I've seen them every single day. I've seen how it tore them apart. So drinking wasn't a thing for me. I was a very light social drinker. I drank for the taste. And when I wanted to decide to stop doing it, which was around 26 years old, I just stopped. I didn't smoke cigarettes because my mother, when I was growing up, she smoked cigarettes and I used to throw her packs of cigarettes away, and it annoyed her, but it made her quit. Drugs, I never tried drugs because I always seen what it could do to people. And I grew up around heroin addicts. And I've seen my uncles overdose on heroin, and I've seen the downfall to what it really can do to a person. So those weren't my things. It's the pornography that got to me. And it can get to anybody because it's so readily available. Some people didn't realize, and that was another thing I pointed out in the book. How did I come to the realization that I was a porn addict? I was moving from one position, from one place to the next in a transition, going to another place that I was moving to. And, as you're packing up things, you're finding things, you're throwing away things. I had a garbage bag full of DVDs that were all porn movies, over 200 movies. And I looked at the bag, I looked at a friend of mine, and I looked at the bag again. I was like, I got a problem. And that was the day that I started on my journey of getting out of it, because I made that admittance to myself, and out loud, I said it, I spoke it into the world, that I knew I had a problem with pornography. And for some people, it takes that kind of realization to get them to notice that they do have an issue, because it's common within the world we live in right now. Your phone is the most powerful computer that you carry around with you. But a lot of people won't let you even touch the phone because of all the filth that they have on it, or that they're trying to hide from. That conviction starts to set into your mind. You become a whole different person. And that's what I wanted to point out in this. What does this thing have you hiding from? It could be porn, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be anything, but you're not the person that you were created to be. and the person that can go out and help others when you're hiding behind something, when you're trying to hold something back because you're sitting in a position of selfishness. So you're unable to give to anybody else. They can't get the best of you if you're hiding your best.
Say that, run that back one more time. That statement right there, run that back for us one more time.
You can't give the best of yourself to someone else when you're not living at your best. You're not able to give out your best when you're hiding behind something. So my wall of shame was porn. That's what was keeping me separated from everybody else. It kept me separated from friends, close friends, romantic relationships. It kept me separated from God. But when I had the realization that I had this problem and I broke down that wall and took that shame away because I was voicing it. I was telling, yes, this is me. This is not who I am, but this is something that I struggle with. This is a part of my flesh now because I've allowed it in. But this is not what makes me. You know, this is just something I dealt with. And I became relatable to a lot of people because of that honesty. Because a lot of people won't tell you things like that. They won't say things, especially when it comes to pornography. Pornography is a taboo thing that everyone seems to do, you know, in some way, shape, form, or fashion. You know, there are always things that are crossing your computer screens, your phone, that may have nothing to do with what you're dealing with. The thing is, like all advertisers know this, and in marketing, you're taught this. You can't unsee things. Once it's passed in front of your face, no matter how subliminal it may be, it's there. It's just a seed now, but now it starts to grow. You can't unsee it. Once it's been seen, you can't unsee it. It's there now. It's in the back of your mind, and there may be other things that come down later that bring it to the forefront of your mind, or just may just sit there for a while.
Hey, you hit the nail on the head right there, and you summed a lot of things up just from talking about the book. But I know we've got other projects we got to tap into. So talk with us about your upcoming project. You mentioned it earlier that it's dropping in February. Walk through title, some of the concepts, and you know, whatever, if there's a premiere scheduled, ways that people, if you're looking for, you know, whatever crowdfunding support, walk through that with us.
So the movie is called A Father's Pride, and it's by Royal Family Films is the company that I'm working with on that, company based out of Newark, New Jersey. We are doing a premiere for it in New Jersey at the Newark Theater on Springfield Boulevard on February 24th. Tickets are on Eventbrite. You can always get those there. We have a YouTube page up for Father's Pride as well, if you want to check out the trailer or anything like that. We're all over social media as well. The story is about a father who finds out, he's a pastor who finds out he's terminally ill, and he wants to pass on his church to his sons. Now he has one son, the eldest son, Shadrach, who is a chef and pretty much a straight line guy. But he has a younger son named Meshach, who is in the streets, running around, doing his thing. But God has put a calling on Meshach, and it's revealed to the father. So when he makes this revelation to Meshach, he runs. Like most people who know anything about becoming a pastor or anything like that, most people run from ministry because it's a heavy, heavy calling. And when you're having fun and God shakes up your world, it's a real heavy thing. So throughout the movie, a lot of things are happening to him and around him that are backing him into the corner where he has no choice but to have this face-to-face with God and say, I need you to do something, and you're going to have to answer this call. You can run all you want, but you're only going to get but so far. You can't escape it. So it's a very interesting story. You start to see the backstory on who the father was and who the brother is and everything. I have a lot of twists and turns in there, but they make sense in a sense of it's pushing him to that point, to becoming the man that he was originally supposed to be anyway. No matter how much he ran from the calling, it's putting him back where he has to be anyway.
And I'll tell you what's impressive about that. And just listening to that and listening to others, it seems like a common thread in just the works that you shared is ultimately you need to be who you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a theme that keeps just resonating with me big time with both of those works. So you've got the book, you've got the film project, you've got previous films. I know part of what's next is what's happening next month in February, but what else is next? Like what else does a creative do when you're already doing so many creative things?
Keep creating. So the next thing I got on, I'm going to make a movie out of the book. I've been asked during a couple of speaking engagements that I've had, people have been asking, they would love to see this on film. So I'm starting to detail that out and work on that as well. I have other film projects coming up, doing my motivational speaking, trying to get this message across to people, because this is the thing with pornography that's not being talked about. You don't really hear the downside, the selfishness that it puts you in, the state of selfishness, the ruined relationships that can happen, all the different things that occur when you're involved in something like pornography, very heavy. There's always something that goes along with that. And the film itself, I think, would give more of a visual, and like we said before, relating to characters. You can read a book, but when you see this on screen and you see what this man or person is going through, and I want to throw some things in there for women as well, because a lot of my female readers, I had to put this in the book as well. Pornography is a little different for them. It's not as much of, a lot of women don't watch the movies per se, videos or things of that nature. What they do is they read a lot of these graphic novels like Zane or books of that nature, the adult novels, and these fantasies tend to stick with them. Now, being in the exotic dance world, I was privileged to see how these women are with this, because for them, I was the guy they were reading about. So this was an opportunity for them to live out their fantasy, no matter how long they've been holding on to this thing. A lot of their relationships had been compared to these guys that they were reading about, and they felt like their significant other wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. Because you just read this whole detail about somebody else.
I'll tell you why I'm laughing, because like for women, like you're saying, they'll read it, they'll capture that image, and then you're comparing notes that way. And I'm just taking a wild guess from what I understand. For men, you're seeing the visual. It's like, why can't you do that? Why aren't you doing that? So right, it's still like bringing in some, like expectations that are kind of like tainted, for lack of a better term. And now it's absolutely like, it's almost like this is what someone does for a living, so they should be a little bit more proficient, versus this is what you do when the mood is right. So it's kind of like, hey, you're kind of skewing things a little bit. But I'm trying not to laugh, but I'm just laughing because I'm like, this is, everybody gets, there are different things that can skew, like you said, your vision, your perspective, and then quote unrealistic expectations. And all of a sudden it's like, what's happening? It's like everything crashes and burns around you.
Yeah, like the separation of fantasy and reality, the lines become very blurred and thin. So when you're in this state, you're looking at it from this could really happen, but for most people, it really doesn't. They're not like that. Like you said, these people are professionals. This is what they do for a living. You're doing this because the moment has struck you. And, whatever you're reading about in this particular book is something that someone, you create a character, but you exaggerate it. It's like having Play-Doh or some kind of clay and you stretching it. It's not in its original shape. You're stretching it to get more out of it. And when the person is reading this thing, they're really thinking like, yeah, this could really be. And it's like the likelihood of you actually finding somebody like this is slim and none. But then I also understood that when women are faced with a situation like that, more likely than not, because that it's slim and none, they'll go for it. And they'll throw caution to the wind at that moment. And this when you have wrecked relationships, ruined relationships, and you have guilt that's laid upon you now because of, women are very great at keeping secrets, but nonetheless, shame is shame and guilt is guilt, and you still wear that. You still have to carry that. And, this could inevitably ruin a relationship that could have otherwise blossomed and continue to be great.
Yeah, well, you know what? And I'm glad you put that out there because, again, it's ultimately leading to a train wreck. It's like, which train are you going to ride? Are you going to ride the LIR? you ride the PATH? You ride New Jersey Transit? Like, which train you want to ride? Because you're going to wreck. So we totally get it. But you've got, like I said, some great moving parts there going on. Like you said, the different elements of writing, filmmaking. As we get ready to wind down, the next to last thing before we wind down is let people know the best ways to stay connected. So websites, social media, preferred contact information. So let's start there.
So the book itself, again, Porn, the Truth, the Whole Truth, and Nothing But the Truth, is available on Amazon, iTunes, Google, and barnesandnobles.com. It'll shortly be available on Audible as well. You can always pick up a copy. You can follow me on IG at Bullet or the Bible. You can also DM me if you want a signed autograph copy. I do sell autograph copies on there as well. But that's the best way to stay in tune with what I'm doing because I'm always posting things on IG. Facebook as well. You can see me on Facebook at Julius Burrows. I always put up content. More or less what I put up on IG will transfer over to Facebook. But IG is always going to be like my go-to because that's just the one that I use and I'm pretty much a little bit more proficient with that. I'm not the greatest social media guy in the world. I'm too busy trying to create different other things. So, but I have some people that help me along with the process. So I'm getting it done. So that's just one thing that I'm doing. I try to keep it as simple as possible. I was born in the 70s, raised in the 80s. So this is what it is.
Okay. Last thing before we close out. And when you look at your life experience, your professional experience, things along those lines, I know there's so many lessons. If there's something that you want to leave us with, whether it deals with the profession or just, a philosophical approach, what's one seed that you'd like to plant and leave with our readers and leave with our viewers?
The biggest thing I want to leave with anybody is never be afraid of who you are or who you're becoming. You may start off in one place that may be so far from where your dreams and imaginations are, but your dreams and your imagination are like fuel, and it's going to propel you to where you really want to be in life. I started off a young kid from the project, raised by addicts, and look at me now. I'm doing films. I've written a book. I'm doing speaking engagements and things of that nature. And I never thought, and I was once told that I would never see 18 because of the road that I was headed down. But there's no such thing as you cannot change. When you're born into this life, you're given an identity and you may wean away from it, but going back to yourself and finding out who you really are and your purpose in this life is the most important thing, because your purpose will always give you that guiding light. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and your purpose will always drive you towards that light. So you can be anywhere in life, no matter how old, how young, no matter what it is, but you can always get much, much further, much, much further.
I tell you what, on that note, you have left a lot for people to digest, take in. It's almost like we did some grocery shopping. So we don't have to keep running out for fast food. We already got everything in the kitchen, everything in the deep freeze, the ice box, the little cooler, whatever you want to call it. So we thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. And as a reminder, we'll have the written article available on our website, acenortonccs.com/blog. So we'll definitely have that available there. And we will also make sure this video will be embedded in the article, but it will also be a YouTube link. So that way, if you're a reader, you can read. If you're a viewer, you can view. And then even later on down the line, we can always put the YouTube link out there. So we are so grateful for Brother Burrows here taking time out of his schedule. We wish him continued success. And to everybody out here, this is part of what we do, and we get a chance to do our go a little bit deeper than just the written article. So we thank everybody. And until next time, all of you, take good care, be encouraged, be of good cheer.
Be well.